So, in this presentation, Gut Health for Runners, we are going to talk about why it matters, and then we're going to get into some brass tacks about what you can do about it. You're going to learn a little bit about me and then a little bit about gut health. It certainly is a hot topic. I'm going to touch on some ideas to plant some seeds to get you thinking. And then we're going to touch on some things that you can do about it. This is a little bit about me. I am a nationally board certified health and wellness coach, and that did not exist maybe 10 years ago. I started coaching in 2017, and I sat for my board exam in 2020. It was put together by the Medical Examiners Board together with the National Board of Health and Wellness Coaches. It really does define our scope of practice and make sure that we're not out there just reading a couple of nutrition books and telling you a bunch of garbage. We have deep and broad education. We are expected to stick within our scope of practice. I work together with doctors and other medical practices as well. My personal background, I do have a pre-professional culinary training from the Cambridge School of Culinary Arts, and I taught cooking classes for 10 years. And since I've been board certified, I have this thirst for knowledge, and I have additional certifications in hormone health, both for women and men, dietary supplementation, gut health, which is what we're going to talk about today, and women's integrative heart health, which I just recently finished. And in the years I've been doing this, my clients are seeing an 80% success rate of really hitting their wellness goals out of the park. So we are doing something right over here, and I would love for any and all of you to join us. So a healthy gut can be a secret weapon for runners. And what is gut health, and will it help our runs, and how do we know if ours is good? So we're going to talk about those things because the right balance of gut bugs can improve running. And while that exact mechanism is not fully understood yet, as you know, this is just the beginnings of this field, we do know that a healthy microbiome has a positive effect for sure on immunity and inflammation, as well as energy release. So it does stand to reason that this will benefit runners and athletes and all of us as well. This contributes to a better run as well as improved recovery and then fitness gains. So it's only been in the last decade or so that we have the technology to get granular about specific strains of bugs in the gut. We are likely looking at a host of indirect effects, of course, that together improve the performance. And I see that with the athletes that I work with. That's the tricky part, right? Because it varies wildly from person to person. So there's no one prescription about gut health that we can say, do XYZ, and it will do ABC within your body. So one runner might improve performance on a high protein diet, while another needs higher carbs or just an entirely different macro blend combined with different antioxidants and probiotics and prebiotics to really lead their event. So it's difficult, right? There was a review done in 2017 that looked at 33 published papers and concluded that the microbiome plays a key role in controlling oxidative stress and the inflammatory response, as well as improving energy expenditure, which I mentioned, hydration, and metabolism during intense exercise. So there's also evidence that athletes can have a significantly higher diversity of gut microbes. And there are many variables that go into training and optimizing systems for an athlete that are different for mere mortals out there in their ordinary diet and lifestyle. So that could be the key, but there has been some deep and broad research done around athletes and the gut microbiome. If someone gets the answer to this formula, they're going to be wealthy for sure. The bottom line is that you can run and exercise to increase your microbiome diversity and increase your microbiome diversity to improve running and exercise. And research backs that up. So we're going to talk about the microbiome and why you should care as a runner specifically. So the microbiome is fascinating. The more I learn and the more I dig into this, and again, tip of the iceberg, I'm going to tell you a lot of different reasons why this should matter to you. These are a few here on the slide, and I'm going to go through these because the microbiome is actually the largest sensory organ and largely forgotten immune system organ. There are 60 different hormones. It regulates weight, blood sugar, serotonin, which is the happy hormone, and regulates your mental health. It uses energy just like other organs, which I had no idea. And I think it's fascinating that it weighs as much as the brain, up to 5 pounds. It thinks and adapts. So that kind of freaked me out to some extent, but you'll learn more about that because there's 20 million microbial genes that outnumber your own genes 100 to 1. 3.3 million of those genes are non-redundant. So think about that. If they're non-redundant, what are they all up to? They're not just there for no good reason, right? So trillions of microbes living in the gut microbiome outnumber your body cells 10 to 1. And every person's microbiome is as unique as a thumbprint. So microbes influence our genetic material and they can send signals to turn on and off your genes. So that's the whole study of epigenetics, which in a parallel life, I would be digging into that study because it's fascinating. They send chemical signals that regulate your hormones, and the microbiome has the largest number of hormone cells in the body. Who knew? It can alter the way we store fat. It can alter how you balance your glucose levels, helps to eliminate toxins, creates natural antibiotics, influences obesity, trains the immune system, and it actually has the largest number of immune cells in the body. It is essential to digest food properly, provides nutrients and enzymes, and then there's the mind-body connection. The central nervous system, or your vagus nerve, which is your nervous system superhighway that runs from your brainstem through your bowels, has 80% of those fibers are communicating up to the brain, from the gut to the brain, and only 20% are communicating in the other direction. So who's in charge? Is it your brain or is it your gut? So when you get butterflies in your stomach or that mid-run urgency to poop, we've all been there. I talk about poop a lot in my business. And the microbiome ultimately can influence that together with your central nervous system. So diversity in your microbiome is your best insurance. So how do you know that your gut health is good or bad? So again, poop. When things are running smoothly, you have smooth, regular bowel movements. And that's going to vary per person. I get asked this question a lot. I'm just going for it, right? Sometimes you're going 3 times a day. Sometimes you're going 3 times per week. What it is consistency for you. And so it's not what your mother's brother, sister's, uncle's, cousin is doing. It's what's consistent for you. You have balanced and smooth digestion, which means things are just moving through. You don't have to think about it very much. And maximum nutrient absorption. And how you know that is through blood testing. If you are constantly low in different nutrients and you think you're getting a good diet and you're still low, you could have compromised nutrient absorption. Hormone balance is good. You're getting a good night's sleep. Your recovery is good. You have consistent energy and a normal amount of gas and bloating. What is a normal amount of gas and bloating? So everybody farts, and regular means anywhere between 14 to 23 times in a day, and it's usually at night. We would all hope that it would usually be when we're not out in the world, but it varies. And again, it's consistency for you. You have improved mental clarity and healthy reactions to food. So healthy reactions to food means that it doesn't upset your digestive system. You don't necessarily get allergies and things like that. So these are ways that you know, or you can be tipped into knowing whether it is running well for you or not. So then what slows us down? I mean, many things slow us down. And it's not just our poor diet. Because the gut, if you think about it, is the gatekeeper to the outside world. That's how everything gets in, right? So antibiotics, alcohol, dehydration, environmental toxins, lack of movement, lack of sleep, smoking, and stress are all on the list. But stress can really be a killer. What stress does when you're in that fight or flight or you're feeling stressed is you have decreased blood flow to the GI tract. And that is one of the leaders to a leaky gut. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. Runners and the loose bowels that we get is certainly a constant struggle. So you not only have to manage your stress before your run, during your run, that kind of thing, You have to manage your stress all of the time because it is cumulative. So it's before, during, and after a race or intense training and running. So stress, like I said, can really be a killer and create that lack of diversity. But here's something I want you to hear. 75 to 90% of doctor visits are conditions tied to our stress. And there's two things. When you're in that fight or flight, you're in the sympathetic nervous system. And that is when you are stressed, right? And when you are in that system, it slows and can stop your digestive system because it wants to put all of its energy into getting you out of the danger that it thinks you are in. So it moves blood away from digestion. It slows things down. There's no peristalsis. Things are not moving through. When you're in your parasympathetic nervous system, when you've meditated, you've had an amazing run, you've run at a really consistent, nice pace, you are in the rest and digest system. So hear me when I tell you, you cannot stress and digest effectively and efficiently at the same time. Your body can do one or the other. So you're either going to stress or you're going to effectively and efficiently digest, uptake nutrients, and be able to take care of your body. This is why that pre-race fueling correctly is so important and takes time. And you may think you have it down, right? You've got your routine, you've got your 8 p.m. the night before, you know exactly what you're doing. And then that run comes and you do exactly the same thing and it doesn't work. It could definitely be the stress that you're under in that moment. When you are in that perceived threat, the thing that happens is it releases cortisol, your stress hormone. It increases your heart rate. The blood sugar flows out of your muscles where you want it to be stored for the long run and flows to muscles and brains that to get you out of danger. It releases adrenaline to help you flee. The smooth muscles of the intestines contract. Blood is diverted from your organs and your digestion, as I mentioned, and the digestive enzymes stop flowing. And that production of stomach acid then decreases. Chronic stress keeps us in this state by continually releasing more stress hormones. So stress over time increases belly fat with the increase of cortisol. It releases histamines, increasing allergies and sensitivities and intolerances, weakens the mucosal lining, and that is the portion that is response to inflammation that can create leaky gut, which then leads to malabsorption, increased inflammation, decreases the healthy bacteria in your gut, can increase acid reflux, GERD, and intensify IBS. The brain then, remember the amount of communication that's happening from your gut to your brain, can completely overreact with a full stress response, even to the smallest stressors, because it's working to maintain the status quo. So that's an area where I work with clients on a food journal. So this is a tool I want you to consider. And when you are considering a food journal, I want you to not only write down what you're eating, but I want you to write down the timing of when you're eating things. I want you to write down generally the portions, and I want you to think about the diversity of what you're eating. And we're going to talk about a tactical method to track diversity in a second, and look for consistency. What I'm looking for when I look at a full food journal is holes in the plan, skipping breakfast, skipping lunch, just grazing in the morning a little bit, or hitting the ground running with coffee only. So I want you to consider a food journal as a tool to figure out where you might need to invest some attention. And then I'm going to give you some diet solutions. So this is a trick that I use with my clients to help improve, everything in general, but for our purposes today, to help you improve gut health. I want to plant a seed for you to think about the numbers 5, 30, 30. So 5, 30, 30, what that means is the 5 things when you're building a plate. When you're building a plate, the 5 things I want you to consider, of course, is your protein, veggies, fruit, whole grains, and healthy fat. Every cell in your body needs the healthy fat to do its best work. And your gut microbiome needs the healthy fat for every single cell to do its best work. So I want you to consider when you look at your plate, How can I fill this plate out? How can I make sure that I'm getting the 5 things? And then the next 30, I challenge my clients to try to get 30 different things, macros, generally speaking, well, some micros in your diet in a day. It seems like a lot, but these can be small things. So I can do a loaded oatmeal bowl that has oats, coconut milk, shredded coconut, chia, flax, cinnamon, turmeric, almonds, walnuts, 3 different kinds of raspberries. And I can pretty quickly get to 15 different things that are giving my body benefit just in my loaded oatmeal bowl. And it doesn't have to be a Fred Flintstone size bowl. It can be a small little bowl that still have all of those things in it. So 5 things on your plate, 30 different macro and micronutrient type things in your diet daily. And then Tim Spector, the scientist, has done a lot of work around challenging people to get 30 different plant-based foods in their diet in a week. So I like these numbers because it can help us plan. It can help us plan our pre-fueling. It can help us plan for race day. And it can just help you plan to be a healthy human. So 5-30-30 is something I want you to consider. And then probiotics and prebiotics. I often get a lot of questions about these, so I'm going to talk about this for a minute. So the prebiotics feed the bugs. The probiotics are the bugs. And so the key to a diversity is giving great prebiotics and a good diversity of probiotics into the microbiome environment. The prebiotics give your gut a feast of the indigestible fiber. So we cannot digest that. The gut bacteria is the animal, the being, the thing that is digesting the prebiotics, and they produce the short chain fatty acids. You can Google up the SCFA if you don't know, short chain fatty acids, incredibly protective against all chronic diseases and inflammation, and wildly important for our own bodies and to stay healthy. There are higher concentrations in cultured and fermented foods of a variety of probiotics and bacteria in food as opposed to supplements. So I want you to think about that, because if you are inclined to feel that you need to add in a probiotic, either because you have gas or bloating or you feel like something is going on, there's currently no deep research that says this probiotic will produce this result across the board. And so I want you to try to get probiotics and add in prebiotic foods on a regular basis so that you can build it using food first and build that diversity in your body using food first. And I'm going to tell you, for those of you that are taking probiotics or are interested in taking probiotics, always consult with your doctor first. All probiotics are not created equal. While there is, like I said, some research touting the benefits, and there's lots of anecdotal research that it's helpful, and I have tons of anecdotal research in my stories in my practice as well, there's a big difficulty today in isolating which bacteria it is that you need. We talked about that, right? It's like a fingerprint. It's different for everybody. You don't know which bad guys or good guys are flourishing or need to flourish in your microbiotic environment. There is, I am sure there's going to be a bespoke probiotic medication solution magic thing that's coming up in the future for sure. But for now, we have tests that can give us a general snapshot of where we're at. And for an athlete, it's going to be trial and error is the name of the game. It's rarely ever one thing. So I hope we all know that adding in one probiotic to your regime is not going to necessarily be a game changer. But if you are looking into it, I want you to know that to find a quality probiotic, there's going to be on the label after each strain of bacteria, there should be what I call a license plate. It's a series of letters and numbers that you would be able to track it all the way back to its source. That gives you that's not a guarantee, but in an unregulated field, it's one way to know that you're dealing with a reputable and quality product. So that's something to think about. And if you are going to do it, they can be very powerful. So test it, start slowly. Don't just start throwing in, 50 million CFUs. Start slowly and test it out and see, and certainly don't test it out right before your next run. So with that said, you can get it all with food, and I definitely lead with food first, but probiotics can be an interesting thing to look at. So you know where you get all those probiotics and prebiotics and great food? In the Mediterranean diet. It's whole, real food as close to its natural source as possible in a wide variety, rainbow of colors. It's nothing we don't know. There's no magic formula. We need to eat a variety of foods in a way that has all the things, the 5, the 30, the 30, and none of the bad stuff. The Mediterranean diet I love because it is one of the most successful diets, bar none, for decades and around the world. And it can be adapted for vegetarians, pescatarians, carnivores, and everybody in between. There are tons of resources. I have a great Mediterranean dietary plan, a 28-day Mediterranean dietary plan that has all the recipes, it has the meal plan, it has everything you need, plus me in the background coaching you along. And there are cookbooks and its flexibility. You can just Google it and find recipes till the end of time. So that's where I would lean to get all of these things to build the diversity of your gut to help you recover and repair. So then, in conclusion, we need to think about taking care of our gut and how it does relate to our performance. I worked with a cyclist, an avid cyclist who was doing some hardcore training, and he was having a lot of GERD and heart rate issues and fueling issues and things like that. So where to start, right? Because you have all these different symptoms and you're wondering where to start. So if you start with a coach, you can work out injuries with arc running. You can ask questions about your body and your movement and your motion and all of those things. You can work with a coach like me to dial in and do food journals and really dial in what's happening. If you're doing it with yourself, you want to ask yourself, what is the best next simple step to move you forward? I mentioned the cyclist, and he had all of these things going on. And so our number one step was to get him eating more consistently some broad nutrition. And after he did that for a couple of weeks and started to feel good, we were monitoring the symptoms and tracked his food directly to his workouts and performance. And then after a couple of weeks, he started to focus on consistent sleep while he was still managing his diet and tracking it to symptoms. Then we moved to how he managed his stress during the day. And then we moved to his harder workouts, his really hard HIIT training workouts to the morning, which was a game changer. Game changer for GERD, game changer for sleeping. And then we had him wearing a heart rate monitor on his hardest rides and really working hard to hold back to keep his heart rate in that fat burning zone. And that tipped the scales, and his GERD is in better control, sleeping like a baby, eating the Mediterranean diet, and has literally never felt better. My point is, it's one step at a time. And you can do this on your own. You will accomplish things. Your odds of success increase greatly when you hire coaches to support you, for sure. And doing it on your own, I want you to think about ramping it up for yourself. You're going to review your symptoms and your goals. You're going to provide accountability by telling a friend, having an accountability partner, getting a coach. I want your goals and your symptoms and all of the things you're tracking to be measurable, and then check in with yourself. You want to make sure that you're making progress. So 2 weeks is a really good time frame. I meet with my clients every 2 weeks to practice, evaluate, come back, and figure out what your next step is. And then this is where you can contact me, my website, michelledewolf.com. You are all entitled to sit down with me. And I say this all the time. Everybody should sign up to sit down and have a conversation for almost an hour with me about your own health and well-being. So it's free. You can sign up right on my website. And then for all the friends and partners of ARC Running, I'm offering a 20% off 6-month program, one-to-one coaching directly with me. And I just ask that you book the sit down, the free consult, to save your date before the end of the month. So that, I hope, kind of gives you an overview. It's a lot to cover, but I hope it planted some seeds and gave you an overview of gut health and what you could start doing about it. It's challenging, right? Because it's individual. And there's no way to know for sure unless we ate the food, measured the output, ate the food, measured the output, and that kind of thing. You want to, as a runner, and depending on your training schedule, and as an athlete, you want to make sure that you're spreading your protein out throughout the day because the body can only uptake so much. And so if you're, thinking that big steak at one sitting is going to give you all the protein you need, not necessarily. So spreading it out is one thing I do know is going to help you keep those stores and help with recovery. I think that the impact would be in lack of diversity. So say many people, they eat like the same five things. You have your chicken, your broccoli, your brown rice, and then you eat that 5 days a week. And then you have your eggs and bacon and whole grain toast and avocado. And so it's the lack of diversity that affects the microbiome. Maybe, not being able to sleep can be attributed to dozens of things. I do talks on that and I could go on for hours. There are dozens of reasons why we don't sleep. Sometimes it's related to diet, sometimes it is the microbiome can be imbalanced. It regulates so much and energy and hormones, and it can regulate your happy hormones and that kind of thing, which can then bump into other hormones that can affect melatonin and uptake and nutrient uptake and the chemical reactions in the cell that are allowing us to settle and rest. And so there's a whole, it's a whole domino effect for sure. 9 times out of 10, I'd love to start with like, are you sleeping? We have to get you sleeping because the bottom line is that is when your body is repairing. It's doing the most repair, both from the nerve synapses, it's in a rhythm. So what we want with sleep is consistency. It's not that everybody in the world needs to have their 8 hours. I have clients who thrive on 6. I have clients who need 10 or more. And it's about consistency for them. And so if your sleep is off, I have a whole bunch of ways that we can start. It might be that you need a daytime regime that helps you get to sleep better or a nighttime routine. It's a very, very complicated issue. You definitely want to give your body 2 to 3 hours to digest everything before you get horizontal, right? So think about how your body is working on all of that and it takes that time. Once you fall asleep in your horizontal, things are happening in a different way. And your body doesn't want to be working on digestion. It wants to be working on cleaning up and repair and the peristalsis that cleans everything out. If you have a big steak and potato in there, the body is not so happy. It's a little bit like if you're expecting your gallbladder and your kidneys and your liver to do all of this work, it's like asking them to do it while they're sleeping in a way. They're not, but it's challenging. So definitely give yourself 2 to 3 hours before you get horizontal to digest, and then your body can do its best work. That varies for everybody too. Again, it's about consistency. And I really like people to, and especially my athletes, I like them to eat within an hour of getting up. I've landed in a place where I'm not necessarily a fan of the idea of intermittent fasting. I do believe that our body needs to fast. I know that for sure based on research. Our body is meant to fast, but it's meant to do it overnight. And then this relates to your question, because if you eat at 7 and you go to bed at 10 and you sleep through the night without drinking too much water at the end of the day, so you get up and go to the bathroom a bunch, but you sleep through the night from 10 until 6, and then you wait an hour until 7 to eat, you've fasted for 12 hours. And that's what your body wants to do. Your body wants to clean and correct and scrape everything out. It doesn't want to be busy digesting. So that's the formula I'm looking for as far as waking up and going to bed. It's the eating within an hour, getting enough sleep so that you wake feeling rested. Oh, that's interesting. You're the second person that's asked that in a week, and I don't have the answer. I've just started to dig into it. And so I would love for you to give me your information so that when I dig into it more and I reach out to my resources, if and when I get that answer, I can share that.
And of course, naturally, stress can be an influence of heart rate as one major, or sleep deprivation or
Yep.
malnourishment, correct?
Yep. Yep. And the microbiome influences all those things. It's talking to your central nervous system. So it can, of course, affect those types of things. I don't know if anybody knows the actual mechanism that says if this happens in your microbiome, it can lower your heart rate. That's what I just started to dig into. Has there been some research done? And is it deep enough or broad enough to answer that question yet? It's a fascinating field. And are you hydrated? I get people who say, well, no, I drink all the time. I have coffee all day. I'm so conflicted because it's impossible to not try the goos and the stuff and the things and all of that, and you've got to test it out for yourself. The bike rider that I was talking about, he's not doing ultra rides, but he's doing 100 miles. He was doing goos and he was doing a lot of those things, and we shifted to real food, which was a challenge, right? But when he shifted his to real food, that were things like nuts and dried fruit and things like that, his GERD and digestion improved. It's hard to say. Do I have other suggestions? It's trial and error. It's really trial and error, especially for when you're that highly trained. Being dehydrated, every cell needs to be plumped up. So if you think about being dehydrated, everything is shriveled and unhappy. And so if you are properly hydrated, your gut and your digestion is going to be running smoothly. If we are too far, then we can imbalance the electrolytes and we can imbalance things in there that are going to then have an effect on the cellular regeneration and energy release and things like that. So there's a sweet spot, but I don't know if anybody knows. I'm going to have to look that one up too. Hydration and as it relates specifically to the microbiome. So it depends on what's going on. So if you're high stress, right, then the body isn't necessarily in a conducive state to absorb and digest and that kind of thing. And so that's where we can get some cramping. And we want to make sure in any case, I want people to spread it out. So I want you to also spread it out on your runs. You don't want to down, and there's the jiggling around in your stomach, which is that physical feeling, which is super uncomfortable. And then there's the inability for your body's really busy, especially if you're on an ultra marathon or you're on those long distances. Your body is really busy doing a lot. And so we don't want to tax it with 8 ounces or 16 ounces of water, taking up that space and jiggling around. And there's a lot to be said. I did do some reading on, that jiggling around can really exacerbate that cramping. So it's important to spread it out and to spread out your protein and your energy as you go so that you can constantly replenish so the body can do it in little sips as opposed to gushing it in there. That's the case for non-athletes too. Like I get all these people who want to drink water and then they forget till dinner and then they drink 30 ounces and then they're up all night going to the bathroom. So we've got to spread it out throughout the day. It can be digestion related because things are trying to move through. And so that's why that practicing the fueling ahead of time to know how much and how little and of what combination is going to move smoothly through. And that too much fluids and the jiggling around can move things through in an uncomfortable way. So I would imagine that's not 100% digestive related, but I would say a good portion of it is things moving through and your body is super busy doing other stuff because it puts us in a high stress environment. When we're running and we're training at that level, the body releases the stress hormones, which then does all those things that I talked about and slows down digestion, reduces the digestive enzymes. All those things are happening. And so the body is not in an optimal position to digest and uptake nutrients. That's why little bits would be better.